അവിടുന്ന് വൈകുന്നേരം മടങ്ങി എന്നോട് മാനസികമായിട്ടുള്ള
Hey everyone, it's Sam, and welcome back to the 911 Nonsense podcast. To stay in the loop, learn about upcoming guests, and join in the conversations with the Noon community, follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. And hey, if you like what you hear in this episode, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share. Your support means the world to us. Today I got to hang out with Hensley. At just 25 years old, she landed her dream job as a flight nurse, a move many thought was too early. Instead of letting the criticism define her, she doubled down, put in the work, and earned every bit of confidence she has today. We talk about the pressure of working in pediatric critical care, the patient that almost made her walk away from nursing, why therapy has been an essential part of her career, and the moments that remind us why we choose healthcare in the first place. This isn't just a conversation about flight medicine, it's about growth, resilience, and learning to trust yourself when everyone else is questioning you. Let's get started. All right, Hensley, thank you so much for joining us on the Noon podcast. How are you doing today?
I am good. How are you? Happy to be here. I know it's been kind of a long time coming. I looked at our messages on Instagram like last year and I was like, oh man, like it's time.
It's okay. It is always a delay in getting people on. It's fun though. It's nice to get to meet everybody and get to hang out in this capacity, even if it takes a year or two to get you on.
Yeah.
Can I go ahead and get a quick intro, Hensley? Who are you? What do you do? And why do you do it?
So my name is Hensley. I have been a nurse for 8 years. I graduated nursing school in 2018, got my license in the summer, and then immediately went into the ICU where I'm from in Atlanta. We did anything and everything at that unit. I was super fortunate to have the experiences that I had at the bedside because I am one of those semi-controversial hires in the flight community with only 3 years of bedside experience, which I think, good and bad for sure. But yeah, I made the move to flight in 2021. I was hired in South Florida, so literally picked up my entire life, moved to South Florida without knowing a soul, all to really pursue my ultimate dream of being a flight nurse. That was kind of put on my path. I think when I was a sophomore in college, I had a flight nurse as a professor, and I was absolutely mesmerized. And then I just kind of had my sights set on it. So yeah, I mean, I've been doing it. I say transport, really. I've been doing transport for over 5 years now because I do ground also, and I've also done some fixed wing, some international fixed wing trips as well. So a little bit of everything. I think it's made me pretty well rounded, or I hope it's made me well rounded. And it's been the time of my life. There's nothing that really gives me as much purpose as my role in transport. I have, it hasn't been perfect, but it's something that I have always found so much fulfillment in. I think it's an amazing field to get into, and I feel super fortunate that they haven't gotten sick of me yet. So here we are.
That's awesome. You had said that you said semi-controversial after 3 years of ICU experience, and most companies require 3 years of ICU or 3 years of ER experience. Why do you think that was controversial?
I think there's a lot of layers to it. I think that you can get a lot of amazing experience in 3 years. You really can. I feel like I really did get really great experience, but I also think that there is something to be said at taking your time. Everyone kind of learns at different rates. And 3 years is the minimum. Just because you reach the minimum doesn't mean that necessarily that's all that you need. You know what I mean? So I think everyone's a little bit different.
Mm-hmm.
I think I definitely had my work really cut out for me. I knew going into that first flight job that I was behind the 8 ball, that I was going to have to spend probably more time hitting the books in skills lab, going over things that, potentially someone who was further along in their career wouldn't necessarily have to spend as much time. Now, don't get me wrong, the learning curve from bedside to transport is enormous. And I think for anyone, and I think no matter how many years of experience you have, it's going to be difficult. But I think that for 3 years, you're really just getting your feet wet, especially in critical care. So I think I was very aware of that. And so I really did put in a lot of work into that first 18 months of my flight career. And still to this day, I still, look stuff up, study, do all the things, either at work in my free time a little bit, but not to the degree that I was doing it that first year and a half to 2 years, just because it's a lot, and you have to really know your stuff. You have to have a really solid foundation. And I think I had a pretty solid foundation, but I still lacked a little bit of maturity. I think maturity, just kind of in critical care, in career, but also emotional maturity is a big part of this job. And yeah, I think that's why it's a little controversial, because I think, I graduated nursing school at 22 and I became a flight nurse at 25. Like, I look back at 25-year-old Hensley and I'm like, oh man, girl, like you really had no clue, I was very naive back then. But yeah, I really think that that's why it's a little bit more controversial, quote unquote. And I think it depends on who you ask. I think I've kind of been told that my hiring was controversial, but I think it's becoming more accepted kind of in this hiring environment that we're in. But back then it was less, I think it was a little less common. So yeah.
And I think it depends on where you're at too. I think base location is a huge factor to those requirements.
Yeah, I just think it depends on kind of the agency. And
for sure. If you could go back now, would you do any other type of nursing before, or would you have stayed longer, or?
I really wouldn't change anything. I think that I grew a lot just as a human being that first few years. It tested me in more ways than I don't think anything else really could. That experience was so hard for me because I was also navigating just a completely different work environment. I had a lot of people rooting for me, but equally I had a lot of people not really rooting for me. And so I think I'm the type of person where, if you kind of tell me I can't do something, whether it kills me or not, I'm going to freaking do it, or I'm going to do it. And if I fail, I know that I gave it my 110% effort. And at the end of the day, I think all those experiences just made me a better clinician because it made me more curious. It made me more motivated. It really did. Like all of that really motivated me to be the best that I could be, for my patients, for my partners, for myself. So yeah, I really wouldn't change a lot because I think that time period for me was so formative. And yeah, I mean, I'm not like I really am like, I know people are like, I'm not like a live life with regrets. And it's like, I really do feel that way though. Like I really don't regret anything about my career and kind of the path that I took, albeit potentially unconventional, potentially made it a little harder on myself. But I think I can look back now and be like, I grew so much as a person, as a nurse, as a human being. And that's those are always going to be my takeaways.
Sure. This is a really random question, but were you the type of kid that had a messy backpack or a very organized backpack?
Oh, I was messy.
Really? That's surprising.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I was messy. Like I was never like dirty. Like, you know what I mean? Yeah. I think some people are just like, but I was just like chaotic, I think. And I still think I'm like pretty chaotic, like as an adult. I think that people that are close to me would kind of say the same thing. But it's like, it really is like organized chaos because I can like, I handle my chaos and I know where everything kind of is in the midst of the chaos. So it's not as like, it's all over the place, but I know exactly where everything is. type
Sure.
thing.
And was nursing something you had always planned on doing?
I thought I was going to do something in like nutrition and dietetics when I was in high school. And honestly, I don't really know. Well, because I just was not sure, I took an anatomy and physiology class when I was in high school, my senior year. I had no real aspirations to be a doctor because I didn't want to go to school for that long. Mad props to all the physicians out there. Could not have been me. I also didn't do that great in high school, like even kind of in college. Like I feel like I hit my stride when I got into my nursing classes, really, especially clinical. I'm a very hands-on learner, which is why I liked the anatomy and physiology class that I was in because it was very hands-on. And then the school that I went to, it was a direct admission into the nursing program. It wasn't like because it was a bachelor's program. It wasn't like you did your prereqs and then you applied and then like you may or may not get in. So I applied going into my freshman year, was accepted into the nursing program, just like off rip. And I just kind of full sent the nursing thing. I didn't really have any medical people in my family either. My uncle was an ER physician. So now we can kind of like, exchange stories and stuff, which is fun. But like I wasn't like raised in like a medical heavy household either. So it was kind of random. But one of my mom's best friends was a long time ER nurse. So I kind of picked her brain a little bit before I went into nursing school, shadowed in the ER. Remember my first patient that I ever saw in my life before college. I was like 18 years old in an ER shadowing a nurse, and it was this elderly patient on the Lucas. And I was like, what's happening here? But I was like, man, this is wild. So then I was like, you know what? For whatever reason, that experience is what I think about. And I'm like, that's really what sent you into nursing, Hensley? Like, that's kind of wild. But yeah. And then the rest is kind of really history.
That is pretty wild. Why do you think that put you on this path? The Lucas, very specifically, is a very interesting point.
I know. I don't know. I mean, I was like, this is like in my head, I was like, this is so barbaric, but this is so. I think I also thought that kind of the ergonomics of the code was very interesting. Like the roles and the teamwork and how everyone was working in such great synergy. It's like medicine is such a team sport. Like you can't function one without, like, we all really need each other. Like as cheesy as that sounds. And I think I really liked, because I also played team sports growing up. So I think I liked that kind of dynamic. And then seeing that kind of in real life in a professional, very intense environment, I was like, oh, okay, like I could see myself working in kind of this type of space. So, and I was always interested in science. I always thought biology was super cool, So I think it was just kind of I was putting all of those pieces together, but I think like apart from the Lucas, I think like the teamwork aspect of healthcare, I think is super cool, and I still think it's cool. Like I love that it's not, you're not in a silo, like you work with so many different types of people. And that's, one part of why I love transport too, because you're working so closely with your partner and you've got to have, great chemistry, great communication, like all those things. So yeah, I think that's also a part of it.
Yeah, that is a huge part of it, right? Teamwork. I'm going to presume that the person that was on the Lucas passed.
Unfortunately, yes.
And at such a young age, like, how did that affect you getting to witness that? Because that's something that not a lot of people see at that age.
This is gonna sound so bad, but it didn't affect me too badly. It really didn't. And I think that was another kind of thing for me when I was that age. I was like, I feel like I should feel like, I think I obviously acknowledge like, oh my gosh, like this is a human being. This is someone's family member. Like this doctor is going to have to call the family and like, you know, how does that even work type things. Like I think I had a lot of curiosity about the process and, you know, like the nursing care after, but I think, you know, emotionally it didn't hit me super hard. And I think that was also kind of like, I think that was also a moment where I thought to myself, maybe I can handle this potentially just like from an emotional standpoint. And I will tell you, as a new grad, I was an absolute basket case. So I don't really know like
Like
where.
emotionally?
Yeah. Like I don't really know. Like, cause when I was a new grad and like cause I also think I was relatively removed from that situation. I was very much just shadowing. I did not do any, obviously, like didn't do any patient care, you know. So I think I was a little bit more removed, but definitely like patient deaths really affected me pretty heavily my first 2 years as a nurse. But in that moment, I don't know what happened, to be honest with you.
Well, it makes sense too because you weren't involved in it.
Right. And I think I wasn't really that involved in it. And I think, and like the nurse I was with was just like, okay, so, you know, that's kind of what happens, but there are other patients too, which
Sure.
is the unfortunate reality, you know, like as terrible as those experiences are, you know, obviously for the patient, the family, for healthcare providers, there are other patients that do require your attention. And that is the most unfortunate part of the job.
Yeah. So for the first few years that you were a nurse, do you think that you were more emotionally involved because you were having more direct contact with those patients, or what? Why do you think there was such a difference there?
I definitely think I had more involvement. And, you know, when you're the nurse taking care of the patient and, you know, especially in like the ICU, like a patient codes or something like that, you know, I took it very personally because I think I also like turned it around on me being like, what did I do wrong type mentality. And I think over time you have to kind of release that blame and responsibility because we do not determine, you know, barring any, you know, errors made. That's a whole other topic. But, you know, we can't control certain scenarios like that. And I think I would just always be like, what did I do wrong? Did I like not say something and I should have said something? Did I give something wrong? You know, I would always turn it around on me. And so I think that's why I took it so hard. But then I think kind of like as you grow up in healthcare and you mature and you realize that a lot of it is not up to you. You just show up and you be the best nurse, medic, doctor that you can be. And the rest is kind of up to, you know, up to God, really. You know, like I think that we don't have as much control as we think that we do.
That is a very accurate statement. I agree with you 100%. Do you think that in your learnings in nursing school, do you think that there's something that they could have taught differently that maybe would have prepared you better for those situations?
I've like had so many posts that I've written about this over and over again about things that nursing school does not tell you. Maybe I'll put it out, but I don't really think that there's anything that can prepare you for that moment or those moments because you have no idea how you're going to react. You have no idea. And there's so many compounding factors, right? Like, what was the nature of, you know, let's just talk about a code. Like, what was the nature of the code event? You know, how much family involvement, the social element of it all. You know, there's so many layers to a code and like every code I've done, like they're all a little, yes, the algorithm is the same, but it's like circumstances surrounding it are always a little different. And so I think nothing can really prepare you. I really don't think anything can really prepare you for that. There's no teach, there's no talk, there's no lecture that can kind of really teach you how to prepare for those really sad moments that happen to people that we witness every single day. I think you just have to, for me, therapy helps. I think you have to find what works for you, an outlet, someone to talk to kind of deal with those moments. Because I think if you don't deal with them, it's going to become all consuming, and you're not going to be able to come back to work, or you're just going to be so unbelievably hardened by the job, which I think we all probably are to some extent. But I think you've got to figure out what kind of like works for you and how to synthesize that in like a productive way rather than kind of letting it eat you alive.
Sure. No, that totally makes sense. And is therapy something you have had since the beginning of your career?
Yeah, I mean, admittedly, I've had my struggles with mental health for sure. Since I was a kid, I think I've been in therapy for almost 2 decades now. Had some good therapists, had some not so great therapists, But I think having a therapist has been, especially in the past few years, I have a phenomenal one. I think it really helps because I think, talking about it with an objective party is really helpful for me personally. I recommend everyone try it. I know it's not for everyone. Some people don't like it. Some people can't find a therapist that works for them. But I definitely think it's something that is worth a shot, for everyone. But again, what works for me doesn't work for everybody. But I think, yes, absolutely. I think that having a therapist and just like a place to kind of understand where certain feelings come from, for me, especially kind of like the guilt that I used to feel associated with those types of events. Like I've been able to kind of work through that, identify where that comes from, like within myself and things like that. So yeah, I mean, I think without my therapist, I don't think I would be as well adjusted as I hope that I am. Listen, some days are easier than others. Some circumstances are easier to get through than others for sure, which is why I kind of say like every one of those experiences is different. Circumstances matter. And so I think, yes, it's been extremely helpful for sure. And because it's also, I've been able to give myself some more grace, which I think we all could give ourselves a little bit more grace, especially when you're in, a healthcare profession. I think we're all a little too hard on ourselves sometimes. So yeah, it's helped me see things from like a different point of view.
That's awesome. And it very, very well put. Do you feel comfortable sharing one of your worst like experiences while being a nurse?
Yeah. I'll keep it, relatively brief. But yeah, I was at the bedside. I was probably, I think I was like 23. I was a little baby. I had an assignment. It was a pretty easy, quote, easy assignment. It was a step down patient, ambulatory, walkie talkie. At the time, patient was around my age and she was about to be discharged home. And that patient had a code event and it was horrible. It was terrible. She had some pretty significant, obviously significant, like cardiac issues, but they were at the time that we thought stable, right? Turned out to not be so stable that day. So I remember calling for the resident on my floor, and the resident was just, I don't blame, I place no blame, but at the time I was like, you're not listening to me. And I said, go get doctor. And I said her name. And so, cause I was like, I don't feel a pulse, and I hit our code button, And that was the first time that I had witnessed CPR induced consciousness. And it was a very brutal code scenario. The patient's family was in the room with her. And they were very appropriate through the whole thing, because, they had been with the patient obviously throughout her life and throughout her disease and everything like that. So, I will never forget that family. They were the strongest family I still have ever encountered. And yeah, we worked the patient for close to 2 hours because she had neurologic function throughout the event, because, kind of in and out, but whenever whenever the patient came back in, had awareness and felt pain and understood what was happening, and so they called the surgeons up to the room. They had a discussion with the family, because, during that code, the patient grabbed my arm and said, don't let me go. And those are the things that like really stick with you. And so I just remember, the physicians were having discussions with the family. There were multiple physicians in that room. We had obviously the physician that was giving us orders. We had the physicians that were a part of like the surgical team and, things like that were discussing kind of like with the family things. And then, the family just said, stop. Let's stop. And oof. And I just remember we all just like in unison just like backed away from the bed, and like the patient looked at the mom and said, I feel better. And then she went. And all the staff was just, we all were crying, because again, I think just the fact that she had some awareness throughout, it was something I hope I never see that again. I will be so honest. That was the hardest moment in my healthcare career to date. That was a hard case that almost took me out of nursing, because I was like, this is horrendous. This is horrific. It was tragic. It was awful. But I think through that experience, I really had to like dig deep and think, can I really do this? Do I still feel like I can, get through this and still be the best nurse that I possibly can? Because I was like, I don't know if I can. It's like, I don't know.
Yeah.
And, I think it took me some time, but I think I always think about that patient and that family. And, I think that we did the best. And I think what helps me and, the other staff that was involved, because we talked about it for a long time afterwards, that because the patient was supposed to be discharged, the patient was not discharged. The patient was in the hospital with us. The patient was not in the car on her way home, and the parents had to potentially drive her back. The physician that kind of led our debrief was like, there's no real what ifs, because this happened with us. This happened with capable people. This happened not in her car, not at home in the bathroom. There's no other what ifs that can be thought of in this horrific scenario for this family. Like, this happened with us. And he was like, it's so much better that this happened with us than if it had happened at home, because we got to her immediately. Like, no time was wasted hopping on the chest, giving our code drugs, shocking. There was no delay in care. And so I think that kind of made everyone feel a little more, I guess, at peace is the only real term I can use. Because, I mean, it was terrible for everyone involved. for everyone involved. Respiratory, pharmacy, nursing staff, physician staff, surgical staff, case management. So many people showed up that they had to close the blinds just because it's like we don't, you don't need all the eyes. Yeah. When people ask me pivotal moments, that's probably still maybe top 3. I'm sure I have other ones in there, but that definitely changed my outlook a little bit.
Yeah, CPR induced consciousness is one of those ones where we're going to see it more and more often now that we're having high quality CPR and all of the ACLS drugs at hand, at bedside, literally 2 feet away from the patient. Like, we are going to see more and more for that type of event. So that's rough.
Yeah. And I mean, at the time I was so not privy to that at all. Because I mean, I wasn't the compressor, but like the compressor stopped, and like the physician was like, absolutely not like basically kind of like teaching people throughout the event, like, no, like the reason that the person is conscious is because the compressions are high quality and you're perfusing the brain, but you've got to keep going.
Yeah. Yeah. That's crazy. It's crazy to think that we're at a point where we can do that,
Yeah.
Do you mind sharing one of your more impactful or positive experiences?
Yeah. I think any time that we can kind of have, I feel like whenever there's like really great teamwork involved with everyone on transport, those are always my kind of favorite calls that I do. We flew for a patient in an ER, smaller pediatric patient in an ER. And I just remember walking in, looking at the patient, looking at the monitor, and looking at my partner and being like, it's going to be a while. Like, we've got our work cut out for us in stabilizing this patient. And again, the family was there, very appropriate. I like to keep the family in the room if I can. They're the best historians, especially in peds. They're the best historians. And, as long as they're not impeding care or anything like that, like I like to keep the family as involved as possible, even if the patient is quite critical. So we had a lot of stabilizing to do. I remember I initiated sedation right off the bat because we were having issues with like lack of compliance with the ventilator. I got my initial ABG, looked at it, and was like, man, I got to do some more stuff, respiratory acidosis, the works. And so I called my medical control just to kind of give an update, just because we had been there for a little bit of, a minute. And I said, hey, this is what I've got. This is what I want to do. And we kind of discussed a little bit about, patient care. And I said, okay, great. I will call you. I'll get my second gas. I'll make all these adjustments. Hang up the phone. Weather moves in. Now we can't fly. So now I'm waiting for an ambulance that is probably an hour and a half away, because South Florida traffic, if anyone is familiar, is horrific at all hours of the day. So now we're waiting in an ER with a very sick patient for an hour and a half more than I would have been, trying to still manage this patient. And we're still not getting exactly where we want to be ventilation wise, oxygenating fine, but not really ventilating that well. So, kind of increased sedation, potentially thinking about a paralytic to kind of get better compliance with the ventilator, but obviously stickler for more sedation before I paralyze a patient. So, increased my sedation. My blood pressure was good. Blood pressure could handle it. Then we initiated the paralytic, and we were just going back and forth on these blood gases. Finally got to where we needed to be. And all the while, hemodynamics were actually pretty okay, which was surprising to me, given the scenario. But we were just able to, like, me and my partner just communicated so effectively with each other, with the family, with the receiving facility, because again, I feel like especially in peds, I do communicate quite a bit with the receiving, because the patient is going to go to a PICU. So I just want everyone to always be on the same page with a PICU patient, especially a small PICU patient. This was a small PICU patient. And so we were able to kind of get the patient stabilized best that we could, but we had a rocky road to the receiving hospital. But, kind of when we got there, the physicians were just super grateful to us for the communication that we were able to give them kind of throughout the process. Because overall, we were at that bedside for probably close to 2 hours because of the weather delays and things like that. And like for that patient, it was obviously time sensitive, unfortunately, but we were able to kind of, just do the bedside care until we were able to get where we needed to be. But I think for me, and that's not like a super hard, heavy hitting story. But I think for me, it's whenever I have great communication with my partners, whenever we work really well together, especially with a super gracious family. I was able to go and see that patient about a week later. The patient was still there. But, the parents hugged me, were so grateful. They just, those are kind of the moments where you're like, okay, what I do matters type thing. So I think whenever I kind of get to loop back around, check on some patients, and kind of see, where that patient was to where they were progressing now, is always kind of gives you a little bit more gas in the tank, at least for me, because I think sometimes this job can feel very, very intense, but it's draining. So I think whenever I can kind of get a little glimmer of, some gratitude from, whether it be physician staff, patient families, or even my partners, and we're just telling each other good job. It doesn't take a lot for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I just think that anything like that. I love it. I love interacting with families, especially with peds. It's a hard dynamic, but it's one of my favorite things about peds is that it's a very family-centered mission.
Yeah, peds are hard no matter what. So hats off to you guys for taking care of those peds, because that can be a little much sometimes, especially for those of us that don't see peds very often. Speaking of flight and weather, have you ever gotten stuck anywhere because of weather?
Not really because of weather. I was still on orientation in 2021. It was September. I remember that trip like it was yesterday. We actually had mechanical issues on the ground in Guatemala. And so we were at the bedside, stabilizing the patient, because this is obviously fixed wing. You're not taking the rotor across the Caribbean Ocean. This was a fixed wing trip. I was on orientation, and we're in the ICU over there, stabilizing the patient. We package the patient, and we're ready to go. I call the pilots and I say, hey, we're coming back to the airport. Let's go. And they're like, so, small problem. And I was like, okay, what's the issue? Some sort of mechanical issue with the aircraft. So we go back into the ICU. We're waiting. And then they say, you know what? I think there was still an issue, but they also dutied out. So we're stuck there overnight. Unplanned. Not anticipating this at all. So obviously did not know the value of a go bag before this trip. So all any of us had, because it was myself, my preceptor, and the paramedic, we only had our flight suits. That was literally it.
No.
Yeah, that was it. So we're trying to go exchange currency and walking around the streets of Guatemala, doing the currency exchange, trying to get a toothbrush, the whole thing. And so we're okay, so we're here, this is what we're doing. And we wake up the next morning, go back to the hospital, get the okay that they're going to fix the plane. We're like, great. Or they're going to send us a new plane. So I get a text from the pilot when we're like midway through like patient care and like getting the patient back on all of our stuff. Because of course the patient is intubated on all the things. Because we had to obviously transfer care back to the referring. So now we got to do all the drips and vents and everything like that again. I get a text from the flight, like from the pilot with the flight tracker, the plane that is supposed to be coming to get us. You see it loop back around, going back to Florida. And we're like, oh my gosh. Like, this is not real life. But in my head, I'm also like, this is what I signed up for. Like, this, like, I was here for, in my little naive 25-year-old head, I was here for the drama, I was like, I am living. Yeah, I was like, I am living. This is why I came here. And so we ended up getting another aircraft and taken back to South Florida, and all was well that ended well. But that was a 42-hour unplanned transport, and that chart was a bear.
They always are. Did you get to go do anything fun at least?
No. I think we were so discouraged that it was just kind of like, it is what it is. And we were so tired because we had gotten up like really early, obviously, to do that trip. And I was the one that really wanted to go on the trip. Because my preceptor told me like there was going to be like a fixed wing that was going to go. And I was like, I want to go, because I wanted all the experiences on orientation. And she was just like, I'm here because of you. And I was like, yes, you are. We still talk about that because I still work with her. So
that's awesome. We got stuck because our pilots timed out in Savannah, Georgia one day, and we made the most of it. Like, we went to the beach, we went and ate at this really fancy like pizza place. We had a great time. That was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I was about to say, that's not a bad place to get stuck. I'm from Georgia, so I've been in Savannah a bunch of times.
Yeah, I can't remember. We got stuck somewhere else, and I can't remember where it is now, but we stayed in a very nice hotel that night, too.
Love that. Yeah, we stayed in a pretty nice hotel, too, actually. Yeah. It was nice. The accommodations were no notes.
No notes. That's awesome. And you're getting ready to have a career change, correct?
Yeah, so I'm still going to be involved with transport in some capacity. To what capacity? I'm not 100% sure, but I still plan on, I haven't been flying that much, but I still plan on hopefully keeping a per diem, just to kind of maintain some relevance in transport still. And
Sure.
I hope to stay involved with like the peds and NICU side of transport, because that's kind of the area that I know best. So yeah, we'll see what capacity it is, but I mean, transport's kind of where my passion is. I think I wanted to become an NP just to kind of push my skills a little bit further, get my higher education, all that good stuff. But I think transport, and who knows, maybe I'll absolutely love being an NP, because I'm still going to be doing critical care and all that good stuff. But yeah, I mean, transport's literally the best part, the best section of nursing and healthcare, in my humble, obviously unbiased opinion. So yeah, I want to stay involved in transport for as long as possible in whatever capacity that is.
I think that there are some companies that fly with NPs. I would even venture to say that in a critical care peds capacity, there's probably a higher percentage.
Yeah, I haven't looked too much into that, but I mean, it's definitely like, it would definitely be on the radar for sure. If I could merge that is definitely something that I'm like looking to in the future. So yeah, I mean, we'll see. I feel like I've always been very, my career has always kind of led me down where feel like I'm supposed to be. So we'll see where it leads next. But yeah, I mean, hopefully it doesn't lead me away from transport, because again, it's fun. That's the thing. It is. It's an absolute blast, as hard as it is and as exhausting as it is. Like, it's a blast.
Yeah, no, that's awesome. I'm going to give you the opportunity to talk about anything you would like to talk about or feel like we didn't talk about anything enough. It's all yours.
Yeah, I definitely think that there's a space for some more pediatric and neonatal geared education in the transport space. Obviously, like, yes, understandably so. Specialty teams are used for NICU, and there are specialty peds teams out there also. But I gotta say, I think that there's a lot of people that run into peds a lot more than they would like. So I think just trying to kind of debunk any fear or misconceptions about peds, because I also think that the education system, like, obviously, yes, I understand why we are obviously geared towards adults, 100%. Absolutely understand that. But I think that there is room for a little bit more pediatric critical care geared education within the system. Just because I think that people run it, and it's like, I know some people say, oh, I never get peds, but then I feel like there are people that get peds every shift. So I think just like any sort of, if I can debunk any little doubts, or just give like a little tip here and there to just maybe make it a little bit, I don't want to say easier, but I guess easier to kind of manage those calls with peds, I think, I'll be good with it. And, if you help one person, or you give one person a little tip, or if you give a bunch of people, I think any sort of education in that area is going to be a positive one, whether it's for me or whether it's from somebody else,
I agree.
So yeah, definitely going to keep posting some of that more pediatric neonatal related education content, because I like it. I always learn something from it too, just because I'm like, oh yeah, like I haven't thought about that in a while, I haven't studied that in a minute. So it's also good for me too, because there's medicine is an ever evolving field, so it's impossible to remember everything.
Yes.
Anyway,
so where can we find you?
So unfortunately, my TikTok got hacked last year in October, which is really sad, because that was like that was my diary. It really was. And it's still really sad to me, and I've not been able to get it back. I am on TikTok again, but it's just hard when that was my literal diary. But Instagram, I'm a little more active on Instagram, Nurse Hens. Yeah, that's pretty much where I'm at. I am also playing with the idea of starting a podcast. I've had some interest. So if you have any advice, let me know.
I have so much advice.
But yeah, I'm hoping to maybe get that up, hopefully like September, October. I'm really going to aim for September. But yeah, I think, I might give that a little bit of a go. So we'll see, TBD. But I think that's going to be my next step, probably in the social media space.
Well, that'll be awesome. I look forward to hearing the education, because I like hearing more peds stuff, and look forward to a potential podcast from Nurse Hens. Hensley, thank you so much for coming out today on the 911 Nonsense podcast. It's been an absolute phenomenal conversation, and I've appreciated getting to meet you and get to know you in this capacity.
Oh, thank you for having me. I know it was a long time coming. I'm glad we got to do this today. So thank you again.
Thank you, and I hope you have a good rest of your day.
Yeah, you too.
Thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying the show and want to show your support, be sure to check out the new merch store on Bonfire. Find the link in the description below. Also, if you have any guest suggestions, or if you're interested in being a guest on Noon yourself, visit the website at www.samspursuit.com to get in touch.